I'm Pam Renard, and this is my story. I grew up in a very small town in western Kentucky. A lot of people in Kentucky don't even know where it is. It's called Calvert City. It's in Marshall County. And we had a relatively small family. We had 3 girls. We went to a county high school. So it sounds really small, but the high school was actually pretty big because everybody in the county went to one high school. And lucky for us, it really focused on preparing you for college. And so I went to high school in the 80s. And so back in the day, they were really encouraging girls that liked math and science to do engineering. So I think in my head, that sounded really good to me, but I didn't really know what it was. So I graduated, I did well in school. School was always, I looked at it as a challenge. I took off and went to Nashville and went to David Lipscomb College for 2 years. And about midway through the first year, I was the only girl in the engineering classes. And I started to discover that that probably wasn't what I wanted to do the rest of my life, but yet I didn't know what I wanted to do. I remember specifically in a chemistry class, we had a professor from a college of pharmacy from Georgia that came in, and he was talking about pharmacy. And I'm sitting there thinking, all the classes I've taken for engineering are the same as pharmacy. And this young gal in front of me was from Georgia, and she turned around and she said, "Hey, you should do pharmacy. My dad owns a pharmacy in Georgia, and I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna run the pharmacy." So that's really what triggered me, was the college professor and my friend that was sitting in front of me. So I went home, this was around Christmas time of second year. I went home and talked to the local pharmacist, which we only had one pharmacy there. And he was a friend from church. He encouraged me, and I actually visited. I was able to go up to the College of Pharmacy at the University of Kentucky. So he basically said, you know, you have to take the admissions test, which I hadn't done yet. And I have to take the whole organic chemistry, which is a whole year-long course. So he said, just go back to Nashville, finish out, do another year, apply again, and you'll be fine. So really, that's how I fell into pharmacy. I didn't know that's what I wanted to do. And for me, it really ended up being a perfect profession. After pharmacy school, there are options to do residencies, just like doctors do. And so at that point in time, I wasn't married, I had no children, I had no boyfriend. And so I decided I was going to do a residency to get more training. And during a residency, you do get paid, but you don't get paid full salary. But it's an intense year or 2 of more training. And so I chose to do that route. And I went to Tampa, Florida. My sister lived relatively close to there, so that was one reason why I chose to go down to Florida. Spent a year down there and trained, loved it. I had the time of my life. And my first job was in South Carolina. I worked in Charleston at the medical university. I was on faculty at the college, and I worked at the hospital. And when I was there, I met my husband, who was working for Westinghouse at the time, and he's originally from Oregon. And so we decided to get married, and Westinghouse took us to Hawaii. Had my first baby over there. We lived there a little over a year, and Westinghouse was ready to move us again. And they said, okay, do you want to go to Pittsburgh or do you want to go to Richland, Washington? So we both looked at each other, well, don't want to go to Pittsburgh. And the Dalles, which is where my husband's from, is relatively close to here. So that's how we got here. We moved here on January 1 in 1994. So I've been here quite a few years. So I had always been interested in doing mission work. I just could not figure out how to do it and have a job and have a family at the same time. So timing was never right for me. But this opportunity through Providence came up, and at this point in time, they sent various teams built from all the provinces. So Oregon, Washington, California, you would sign up and you had to apply. There was an interview process. You got a phone call. You had to give references. And these trips, I'm not gonna think, they were about 10 days, maybe 10 days or 2 weeks. And they did what they call village teams, and they also did surgery teams. And so my first one I did was in 2017. And I went with the village team to Guatemala. And I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous. I mean, I've been out of the country, but I had never been to a third world country, especially with people I didn't know. Like, I didn't know anyone. You spent the first night in a good, nice hotel, and then we get on buses and go to various villages. And the bus rides were long, like 10, 12 hours-ish, up in mountains and around turns, and just the bus ride itself was super interesting. Buses couldn't make it up the turn, so they would back up and go again. And we had security people with guns and all the things. And I can remember every time we went around a turn, it was, you know, you're going uphill and going slow. This one guard would always jump off the bus, and he had his big gun and everything. And I asked him, I'm like, why are you doing that? And he said, because people wait out there in the ditches and they'll come on the bus. I've been very sheltered, honestly, living in Kentucky and living here. I mean, I've never seen anything quite like that. We would get to our destination and we would set up clinics in schools. And again, it was all organized ahead of time. There were fires going, there were tons of people, and they said they had walked miles to come to these clinics, because in Guatemala, they don't have good access to healthcare, which basically means they had never seen a doctor. They were so excited to have the privilege of healthcare, which we take that for granted here. And some of them were very sick. Some of them needed surgeries. I think for some it was life-changing. Other things we did, we provided walkers and wheelchairs to people, and we would have people like carrying their family member in because they didn't have another way to get around. And so I was involved with this elderly woman. Somebody literally carried her in, and I was able to give her a wheelchair so that they could push her out. And she was in tears herself. So just little things like that. So I heard about these other people I'd been to Guatemala with going to Africa, and I was like, I want to do that. And so my husband got to go on that one. They took construction people. My husband can build things. And so he was able to go. And there was about maybe 25 of us that went on that trip. That was a little longer trip just because of the travel in getting into Kenya. We went to a little village called Cangundo, and they have a clinic there. And so it was a lot of the same stuff as in Guatemala. We went to some orphanages. That was very eye-opening to me. And we did like vaccines for the kids, things for parasites in their belly, vitamins and stuff like that, just for really young kids. It was very emotional. That was a good trip. So I am now on the roster with a group called Samaritan's Purse, and they're based out of North Carolina. And I'm on there, they call it the DART team, Disaster Assistance Relief Team. And it's more international. I retired from Cadillac in 2018. And my Africa trip was in 2019, and then we had COVID. So I haven't really done pharmacy since 2019, which made me a little nervous. I mean, I keep up with my CE and all that, and I have an active license. But I read about what they do, and my husband read about it, and I said, hey, do you think I can sign up for this? Because when you get deployed, it just depends on where you're going. It's a 3 or 4 week commitment, because travel time, and it just only makes sense to do it for that amount of time. So it was a lot of dusting off the cobwebs, getting through the interviews, and then it took until February for them to say, okay, you're good, you're on the roster. And then they have training back in Boone, North Carolina. And so I had signed up for that for a week. And right before that, the Ukraine response started. So they were already sending people And I have to say I was nervous. I've never been in the areas that we were in. We were not on the front lines. We were not. We were more west. And so wasn't like we were getting soldiers type people. We were getting refugees. They were in not good emotional states. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, they had just been run out of their homes, basically. They had seen their friends getting harmed. They had seen death. They had seen a lot of things that humans should never have to see. And they were traumatized. It was very different, very different. I am thankful for the experience. I'm thankful that I have pharmacy knowledge and I can go and help. You know, there's just so many things that are running through your head about how lucky we are. We have so many things here at our disposal. A lot of America is so busy, and I get this way too. You're just busy and you're focused on your errands and doing whatever, that you don't always take a few seconds, breathe, look around, see what's going on. And if you do that, you'll see there's a lot of things that are going on and people that can use your help in different ways.